Welcome everyone today for the first, well, in a long time, it's been a while since we've conducted one of our tech leader roundtables, and I'm really excited today to have three guys that I've got major respect for in the industry. Rather than me fluffing my lines and, you know, tripping over myself with introductions, it's probably best to pass the baton around and get the guys to do a brief introduction before we get started. So, Niels, would you like to go first?
Sure. So my name is Niels Hagner. I run a company called Realitech, so do professional services, mainly in the broadcast and media industry. Besides running the company, I do a lot of project work myself, and I'm actually sitting in the Sky's HQ office today. And I've seen both light and darkness when it comes to project delivery. So hopefully I can share a few of my experiences with you guys as well.
Perfect. And Ayub?
Yeah, I'm Ayub Salah. I'm Executive Vice President of Transformation in Majorel, part of Teleperformance Group, in customer experience and business services for companies, for big companies. So I was running also IT teams since many years, and recently I'm also leading the digital transformation.
Fantastic. And last but by no means least, my good friend Tony Hodges.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Patrick, and thanks to Niels and Ayub for the intros. Yeah, I've been program manager, director, project manager now for over 25 years in the city, mostly across London, but worked in New York, Hong Kong, and Paris as well as of course London. For me, it's all about delivery of complex, medium to large to small, projects. Mostly in the banking industry. I think all of them financial institutions, ranging from Bank of America through to Credit Suisse, which is no more, I think, and currently at LSEG, but HSBC, JP, quite a few other organizations. But look forward to this session and hopefully learn some things as well from Niels and Ayub and yourself, Patrick, of course. Thank you.
We'll try. I'll try my best. But look, so thanks for the introduction, guys. Really good. And as I say, I'm privileged to have you guys take some time out of your day to join me here. So what we want to be discussing today is optimizing project delivery, the strategies, the challenges, and some future trends that we see. So I suppose first things first, as when you're looking at delivering new projects or programs of work, the first place to start is probably looking at effective project management strategies. So I'll just put this one out to the floor, and we'll talk around there. But what would you guys see as the key strategies to ensure timely project delivery? Is there anything that you can say we need to cover these couple of things to make sure that we're in the right place? Niels, why don't you give it a go?
How should I answer that? Well, there's one thing, and this is just my view, I'm happy to be challenged on it as well. I think it's important that you have the right tools and methods, etc. But I don't think you should expect that that's going to save the bacon. So there's a lot of other things. If I can say something slightly controversial about Agile, I've been working with Agile for probably 20 years now. There's lots of people in the industry who know Agile, but they don't really understand it. And there are some, I quite often tell people to actually go back, zoom out to look at the principles and behind Agile. And if you can embrace those and understand those and apply those, you will be in a much better place. And that's what I'm doing. I've been engaged in some major transformation projects within Sky and NBCU, still am. And that, for instance, technology is kind of part of what we do, but we also work with people. So I deal with a big program now, multi-country, major integration and validation projects. We've got 500 people just involved in the integration and end-to-end test on this. And if you can't get the communication, the relation, collaboration going, then it doesn't really matter what method you use, you're going to struggle. So you definitely need the methods, you need the toolkit, you need the governance, but don't forget the people.
That's a
Yeah,
great
You
point.
agree?
good point. Yeah, good, very good point.
Great point. What are your thoughts, Ober? Well,
Yeah.
yeah. Would you, any thoughts around
Yeah.
strategies?
So from
Yeah,
my
please go ahead,
perspective,
Anthony.
yeah, sorry, apologies, there's a bit of a delay there. Yeah, from my perspective, I think what Neil said is 100%. I think totally with him on that. I think we see the same challenges. It doesn't matter where you work. You could work in a complex sort of scenario for a major bank, financial institution, in manufacturer, wherever, but it's still the same challenges. And I believe the key ones are, first of all, understanding what the vision is and what the objectives are, what the end game are, is understanding that, making sure that we have a clear sort of plan and kind of scope definition. I don't think we need to go to the real sort of nuts and bolts of definition, because that's impossible. Otherwise, then we'd be into the sort of waterfall. And I know waterfall is a bit of a it's a word not many people like to use these days. But a lot of projects project institutions that claim to be agile, not really, are they? They work in a quasi sort of agile stroke, waterfall method. So some in a lot of cases in between, but clear planning, a scope, yes, is very, very important. I think you need high level milestones and reviews, a good risk management sort of structure. And of course, if you're going to use agile, then we need to make sure that we're kind of trying to use agile in the right way. The ceremonies are very, very important in terms of front running the delivery, because we're in a lot of projects, we find that the requirements are not well understood. They're coming through just in time, not giving the devs enough time to understand what needs to be delivered. And it's it's really around prioritization as well, making sure we understand what the must-haves are, and make sure we got the right resources. We got we understand what the team's strengths are. For new teams, that's difficult. I understand that, and normally you take a while to understand who's what strengths a person has in certain areas. Everyone's got strengths, but where do they fit well most? And that takes a little while to get. And also, I think you've got to appraise yourself quite regularly. Assess yourself and how you're getting on, whether there are any sort of areas where you need to really latch on to and try and improve. But it's very, very important that you also put people first, I think, above processes, and that they know that you care for them, that you listen to them, and that you respond accordingly. Not just marching forward, everyone getting stressed out and not understanding where they're going. So, yeah, I think that's what I'd say, Patrick.
Perfect. Excellent. Hey, what are your thoughts around what the guys have mentioned?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think not have too much to add to all what was said, but for me, in addition to that, just to be precise, it's also, of course, people first, but also the other component, which is business alignment. It has to be really on top of everything to make sure that we are not running during the project on really wrong actions. That needs to be really not only early in the process, but also regularly during the whole cycle of the project. And that's important to align the goals with the business side to make sure that all what we are doing is really also meeting the business targets.
100%.
No, yeah, no, that's good. I think so what I've got from that is if we're looking at, there's a big mixture, but we're sort of talking along the same lines. We're looking at key strategies or key things, principles, or that we need for successful project delivery. We're looking at first things first, business alignment, so making sure that everyone understands what the goals are, what the outcomes there are to be reached, and everyone's on the same path. So there's like a golden thread running through the project, so everyone's on the same page. Understanding the collaboration and communication that's needed between the teams to be able to get the right message across, but also being able to prioritize. And I suppose that's where the prioritization and communication piece comes with trying to make sure that we're working in the, people you mentioned Niels and Tony as well, that we're trying to use agile methodologies, but they're maybe not being used correctly. Would you say that's down there? And prioritizing and communicating are probably two of the main points of agile that need to be in place for you to be able to be using to use that methodology correctly. Have I got that right? Or
if I can comment on that bit. So I mean, if you look at the Agile Manifesto, again, zoom out and look at the principles and the rationale behind it, it pretty much says that don't believe that you know everything up front, because you won't. Things will change and you will discover things as you go along. That also comes to prioritization. And I've seen quite a few cases. I go in and challenge, and I encourage people to go in and challenge pretty much everything. So if we can't explain why we're doing something, we shouldn't really be doing it. And in particular, when supporting a specific business goal. And so I've seen cases where we've been given from the product people that we definitely need to have this feature in this particular way. But then when we started challenging it, turns out that's actually not really that critical. So I think definitely keep a track on the priorities, but be prepared on changing priorities as you move forward.
Yeah.
Do you guys agree?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And across most of the organizations I worked in, the issue of priorities has always been not really well understood, up front. Also, I think you mentioned it earlier in terms of, or someone mentioned earlier, in terms of scope creep, so in Agile, obviously you expect that you don't know everything, right? And it's not, I wouldn't call it scope creep, actually. I would say when you get into the elaboration phase, you find that you have maybe a wrong perception of, or rather, you get more enlightened as to what really needs to be done. And of course, you may not have fully accommodated for maybe an increase in workload, right? And that's what we see across many organizations, where we see when you go into the elaboration phase, that the actual amount of work needed is far greater than what you envisaged at the start. And so how do you deliver something that you've promised will be ready in maybe X months' time, and then you realize all of a sudden the scope of that is increased massively, and it's the same kind of features and so forth, but the actual work needed to deliver that has increased massively, exponentially, disproportionate to what you felt was going to happen, because we did expect some change or increase to take place. So it's how we handle that is really the most important thing. And there's really not much. So if you've got an end date, right, and you've committed to customers, whatever, an end date, so what one has to give, right? You either reduce the scope, you increase your number of resources. There's not really much else you can do, right? And so it's really striking that right balance, and also making sure that you're constantly delivering. That's really, really important. Even if it's baby steps, so you're constantly delivering, and then you basically have to communicate and collaborate as to how you get to the end goal, with a system that's functional and meets your objectives, but doesn't have the whistles and bells as we thought. Yeah, so scope creep is really one, but it's more about elaboration rather than scope creep. Scope creep, I think, is a bit of a misnomer.
That was something that I wanted to come on to, actually, because we're talking about sort of effective strategies, but there's always going to be common challenges when looking at delivering new pieces of work or project delivery. And one of the things I wanted to ask about was how you handle unexpected changes or scope creep in a project, because we're talking about having business alignment and the right, prioritizing the right acts or the right tasks. But that could be completely thrown off, like you say, with something comes up, and you might delve a little bit deeper in the technology that people are using, and there's spaghetti code in there, or there's there's things, a lot of technical debt or whatever it may be, and you've got to try and unpick something that you didn't expect.
Sorry to interrupt you, but don't forget the other external variables, right? It could be maybe your environment's not already in time. It could be that someone's gone sick, or you've had, whatever. There's so many things hitting you at once, and it's how as delivery people, how we manage those things, it's very, very important, I think. But there's so many variables that we don't necessarily plan for at the outset, and the key is how do we deal with those things, I think, when they arise. Sorry, carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, no, of course. So what does anyone else like in terms of handling those unexpected changes? Is there a strategy or a way of working that you've found helps to either A, minimize those unexpected changes, or B, effectively manage them when they come up?
So I would like to really take some examples that we had during our journey, in different companies, and specifically within Majorel in the last 4 years, when we had to deal with unexpected. I think everyone had this kind of events above COVID, but also the changing on and the big transformation of the different businesses that forces us as a tech leaders to always review our timelines, or changing completely the scope, or new unexpected requests coming from the business side. So the way how we tackled this, and I heard also Niels and Anthony talked about the agile. So the agile topic is it's not just a fancy word. It's something that needs to be embedded of the way of thinking and the way of reacting to all these events. So embedding it as a way of working is the only way to deal with unexpected changes, because since the last 5 years, we see only unexpected things, all the time. So there is no more, it's normal way of doing it. So, we cannot, so the risks that we never saw as a risks, now it's happening all the time. So the question is how you embed the way how to deal with those changes all the time. So what we did I did with the team is to embrace this, and to educate the business to have the business, when they come with the request or visions, wherever, so they always think big, but educating them to slice it in a very small deliverables over time will keep us really minimize the risk in terms of wrong deliverables, also costs, because and resources allocation, really making a lot of efforts on things that will not be used at the end. So now it's really, we need to have all the time short cycles with short deliverables, and then automatically we avoid and we see failures. So then if we fail early, it's better to fail in 6 months or 1 year, because it's a disaster if you spend too much money, efforts, and also from a motivational perspective, it's killing. It's a killing topic, for the team.
So that really resonates with me as well. So I very often try to advocate continuously just driving down technical risk. So especially technical risk within my area. And that means so sometimes people come and say, well, we can't do this. So rather than say, all right then, I said, well, what can we do? Can we do something to just kind of drive down the uncertainty that still adds value to the overall project delivery? So I can't go into details, but we got a case we're in the program I'm working on at the moment where we're waiting for a key deliverable, and that will come later. And I don't want to sit around and wait for that one to come in, so we can't do anything in this particular area. So we're looking at, can we simulate it? Can we simulate some aspects of it? And again, it's to learn, to find issues, drive down the overall technical risk. We did a big two actually connected programs last year that was deeply involved in, and we kind of took this approach. And guess what? When we came to the actual end of the program, there were no nasty surprises, which you usually see in these big programs. I've seen people panicking in the last few weeks when everything just kind of flies open. But this just went smooth.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
With that's really thanks so much for sharing that. I think there's some really good insights there. One of the things that so yeah, even for a business like ours, when we're looking at project delivery or putting teams into place in our professional services, we've got to manage the expectations of our stakeholders within the business, because there's, like we've mentioned there, there's going to be unexpected challenges, there's going to be unexpected delays, and I suppose a big part, a big skill that someone who is working at project delivery or project director level, project program management level, is to have that ability to manage expectations or to communicate up. How do you find that as what challenge have you faced around that?
Okay, can I start with that one?
Yeah.
So communication is absolutely critical, and I think transparency, to be completely honest, with not trying to sweep anything under the carpet, neither upwards or downwards. You will get much more engagement from the delivery team if you actually keep honest and open with what's happening. So within the program we had, I'm working on now, there was a demo yesterday for the CEO, the top CEO on Sky Group, and we were completely open with everyone on the challenges we had and the priorities and why this was particularly important, etc. So I've seen cases where people try to hide bad news. That is crap. It's much better to be as early as possible, because then suddenly you can start to talk, okay, what are the options? Shouting at a problem doesn't make it go away. So you can start looking at what are the options, what are the mitigations. And as Tony mentioned, sometimes something has to give. And pretty much always there is something that you can kind of tweak a bit to mitigate things. But I think absolute transparency and honesty is crucial for this.
Yeah, no, I like what you said about honesty. I mean, that's very, very true. I mean, we've seen so many times where dishonesty creeps in, but sometimes it's not always for reasons what you think, right? People don't want to lose face. There's financial pressures. There's there's all sorts of reasons, right? And by nature, people sometimes just don't want to, tell bad news, and it's not, I don't think it's always necessarily scheming. It could be circumstances, right? But I think as Neil said, I think communication is absolute. I think you said it as well, Patrick, and I think all three have said it. Actually, start off with Mazrag saying that communication is really number one. Really, effective communication is so important. Both at the amongst our teams, developers, testers, etc., but also at the C-suite level and so forth. It has to be obviously consistent and has to be fairly accurate, and it's got to be constantly updated as to what's going on. And we've all seen unrealistic deadlines, right? And communicating things that can't be done, and sometimes it's hard because there's regulatory requirements where we have set deadlines. We can't budge from those deadlines. But again, within situations like that, it's how we communicate and collaborate with each other. Because this may sound a bit strange from where we are today, where everyone's sort of talking about remote working and so forth. But we started remote working years ago, right before the pandemic. You know that as technologists, we were doing remote working quite a while back. I would say this though, when we co-located together in one building, because we had to undertake some very, very tough regulatory changes, I won't go into detail, co-locating made the big difference. It really did. And because we made sure that everyone was on the same page, we had regular stand-ups in person. You could see people's emotions, when you're in person, right? Even on Zoom or whatever, Teams, it's very difficult seeing the emotions of people and understanding fully. You can't go into a room and say, look, oh, well, what do you think about this? So co-locating may help massively. Now, I'm not suggesting that for 1 minute that we should all go back into the office. No, I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is that communication is everything. And if we can get communication going over Teams, Zoom in as effective a way as we did face to face, then I think that's very, very important. But communication's got to be top of the list, I think.
I want to add, really, I totally agree with Anthony and Niels. I think if we can resume it to it's proactive communication.
Yeah.
It's more than reactive communication to incidents. So proactive communication also from in this remote working and hybrid working. So what we have done also is having a project itself about the communication, which is really establishing an internal marketing strategy for the whole tech capabilities, tech projects, and so on in parallel. And that is also making it easy when we have to communicate difficult or critical,
Right.
like Neil said, about very tough situations when we communicate. So we are present and they see the workload and the heavy tasks of the team. So it's minimizing the effects of bad news, I can say.
Yeah.
Do this internal marketing.
And also the good news, right? It's, hey, we've delivered, right? We've delivered spectacularly. There's also good news. We don't approach our stakeholders when it's only bad news.
Yeah.
It's be nice to also give the hearty in your approbation, lavish in your praise for the people that work, that doing sort of engineering, testing, whatever, project managers, they all need a pat on the back at some point when they've done good work, It's not always bad news, I don't think.
Yeah, I think sometimes in these conversations, you're really quite right, Anthony. When we have these conversations, with what I've mentioned, like even the questions that I'm asking, sort of overcoming common challenges, giving bad news, whatever it may be. But you do sometimes forget that things go well at times.
Yeah. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, and it's about but at the same time, it's still then managing the expectation. So a big thing we got it on our wall in our office. Celebrate all wins. So anything that goes well or anything's good, we got. So it's about making sure that everyone's we celebrate everything that goes well, no matter how small, because it is important. Because that we've mentioned, the last 5 years have been challenging in business in all walks of life, especially. I mean, you could probably see my beard was a healthy ginger when we started the company 5 years ago, and it's I'm getting more and more like Santa Claus every day. So there's been lots of challenges. So having the ability to be able to share good news and celebrate the successes is good. Do you find that one of the things that I wanted to also talk about was, obviously, as we've mentioned, remote working, it's been going on for years, but there has been, obviously, over the last few years, there's different tools and techniques and technologies that have come out to try and improve or help with delivery of projects, whatever they may be, different communication tools, different technology. But do you think that sometimes people forget that a simple conversation, or just, you know, the overuse of technologies, and this is going to sound strange because we work in a technology business, but the overuse of technology is can sometimes be more of a hindrance than you know, they're making life easier.
I think that's true. I think we can also try and reinvent the wheel all the time, right? We can come through with different tools all the time. Sometimes in organizations across the board, they have different tools trying to do the same thing, reporting the same way, but using different tools. And sometimes you may have, I've seen 3 or 4 different tools used for reporting in the same organization, right? So you're having to replicate that information because one is slanted towards a certain audience and so forth. That's so inefficient, it's unbelievable. And it takes up time, you know. And I think having the right tool set and sticking with it is very, very important. Not trying to report in different ways all the time across different tools. But I think we see that everywhere. I'm sure you know, in different organizations. Within the same organization, I mean, where they're using multiple sort of tools for reporting based on the audience. That's you know, it's quite difficult working in those circumstances.
That's one of the things. Yeah, 100%. That's one of the things you mentioned at the beginning, wasn't it, Neil? Was around sort of strategies of, you know, for effective project management, was like, you know, we can have the tools and the methods. We talked about the communication, but getting that tool set right and the technology right to be able to deliver successfully.
I think it's important to be aware that a tool is a tool. It's not going to kind of solve your problem. Me, if you get the mixture of ways of working with the tool set right, then you're on to something. So I did have the opportunity a few years back with Sky. I was working in a program that was pretty much failing, and there was a big reboot. Part of the failing was, even though that was a little bit before COVID as well, was that the teams weren't communicating with each other, and there was big, thick, bulletproof silo walls between them. So I got a little bit of a free run to do what I wanted after we rebooted the program. So the first thing I did was to blow up the silo walls, and essentially, rather than communicating up and down between teams, make sure we have the shortest communication paths, engineer to engineer, QA to QA, just make sure that that flow worked well. And strange enough, it's not strange enough, we turned around this failing program to something that became a little bit of a flagship example on how things should be run. And we used Slack very much as the communications tool. The one I'm in now is complicated in the sense that there's quite a lot of people in the UK involved, US, Germany, Italy, Portugal, Czech Republic. So physically you can't be in the same place anyway. But again, we're using Slack, we're using similar principles, so kind of level playing field, one virtual team. We have one objective together, very short communication routes. It's completely encouraged, not only approved, but encouraged for people to reach out outside their comfort zone, and to communicate with people, and also to learn as much as possible on what's outside their particular remit, so they see where they fit into the big picture. But tools like Slack has been really, really good for that.
Yeah, I would like really to add here. It's really what is important. What we learned during the last 5 years, and now with all the remote working, is more about the collaboration and real-time updates than the tool itself. How the format of the templates of how to report. So this is why, and also my mission in Israel was quite hard in terms of the teams were spread across the globe, and instead of spending too much time on choosing the one tool for everyone for the project management, so we let everyone, each region, using their own tool, and having just really a thin overlay for reporting. but they report, everyone report in their formats, and on top we consolidate sort of this information in a data management data set to have the dashboards and reporting that we want from this. So to make it really more lean and allowing the teams to spend time more on collaboration and real-time updates to get things done, more than spending time on how to get aligned on processes, which is, I'm not saying it's not important. Processes are important, but the processes are not the target, are just an enabler. So if we spend too much time on processes, on enablers, we will lose track on the business side, and that was really big learning the last 5 years.
Interesting point though is that essentially what you refer to is the Agile Manifesto, to use communication more than kind of contracts and formal. So it all, again, zoom out, you see what it actually means.
Thank you.
100%. Some really good points made there. I think like what Tony mentioned at the beginning, having an over reliance on technology, or having and different tools can sometimes be more of a hindrance. But what I mean, look, we're looking at into future trends in the market, and there's only going to be more and more technology coming out that's going to help. So we obviously have to try and incorporate that into our business as much, into our project delivery as much as possible. The word on everyone's lips over the last year, 18 months, AI, machine learning, artificial intelligence. Where does that, what part does that have to play in the future of project management? Is ChatGPT going to take everyone's jobs? No, only joking. But in reality,
will we be still here?
Yeah,
20 years time, whatever, 5 years time.
Yeah, but what role is artificial intelligence going to have in the future of project management?
Well, the way I see it is that it can have a positive impact, but I know it's the flavor of the moment, and everyone's talking about it. And to be honest, a lot is totally over the top, right? But it's the reality. It's here, and we got to see how best we move with it. The first thing I would say is that predictive analytics, potentially, where AI can predict risks and outcomes, potentially. I'm not saying it's a total only use. As someone said, it's how you use AI that's the most important thing. I think it's not that AI will take over. It's how best I think the ones that will succeed is how best how they use AI in the best way. Prompts, inputs, etc. And that's probably key. And I think predictive analytics potentially. But there's real life things where AI, I don't think will be able to do that. There's automation, automating routine tasks to save time potentially. I'm sure there's lots of routine things that as PMs that we do, PMO that they do, that could be automated. I guess there's also potentially the improved allocation of resources based on data-driven insights. I guess there could be an element of that used in the future. I don't think it takes away the fact that you can speak to someone, their emotions, how they feel, how best you can motivate them and drive them into being more productive. Clearly, there's also, I think, possibly an enhanced decision making, where AI provides recommendations and insights into perhaps a better decision making, give it what if scenarios, and then use that as other ways of looking what the options are. So I do think that the AI could help in those examples I've given.
So I'm a little bit cynical. The reason I'm cynical is back late 80s, I spent a couple of years teaching at the university in Sweden. And one of the subjects I was teaching was AI.
Yeah.
And although the kind of principles, neural networks, etc., was still around, but it was just theoretical model because we didn't have the data, we didn't have the computational power, so we couldn't really do anything useful. But even back then, the talk was, oh, this is going to take over everyone. We're all going to be fired. And for me, I use large language models quite a lot, but I use it as a tool. It's just like any other tool.
Absolutely.
And to just make my life easy, if I need to do a project report, I just smack down some bullets and let some LLM model to flesh out the text. Saves me time. It doesn't take over the kind of, let's call it the natural intelligence element of it.
Yeah. I think that, this is my personal opinion. You know, artificial intelligence is really a wrong word to define this technology. I don't know, we define it, IBM guys or whatever, those kind of things. So it's really very efficient tool. As Neil said, it's really just a tool that will maximize the efficiency. It's real, and it's really very becoming really very, very efficient. So automation will be strengthened more in the future, from my perspective, the automating tasks and so on. And also the access to information is more really accurate than ever and more fast than ever. That will be very useful for the team. And as Anthony said, for the predictive analytics, specifically in the risk management, in a big portfolio of project, overlaps, for example, of risk we don't see, and even a project manager or PMO really who is managing the office cannot see directly there. So it will be a very efficient tool to do proactive actions with regards to those risks. But we don't forget something. It's project management. It's all about, mostly about coordination. It's a human topic. It's only coordinating between different stakeholders, teams, business, a lot of stakeholders. So the main role of a project manager or the teams who are delivering is really to get smooth actions done across different many peoples. So I believe that such tool AI will be reducing conflicts, confusions, because it will be more smoother than ever. But human component is the predominant one here. It's not AI.
So I think I 100% agree with you there, and you called it out there. I think dependency management, which strips up a lot of projects, complex projects where you're depending on different areas. If you can get AI to look at various projects, etc., and work out what the dependencies are, then why not? I mean, you know, that's just helping. But I have a question for you though. But do you think that it will? Yes, it'll make us more efficient, but does that take the stress and workload away from our daily jobs? What do you think on that point? Or will we be given more work as a result? We're back to square one.
Yeah, I think so. I think that it's an illusion to say that it will minimize it. Maybe during the hype right now, you will see the effects of direct cost optimization, because you will have some few FTEs that you can optimize, but in the target, it will lead to be more faster and faster in the future, and then you will not optimize anything. I don't think so.
Yeah.
It's just a tool, as Neil said, rightly said. Really, it's another tool.
Yeah.
I think that's really, really interesting, and I think we've covered some. I'm conscious of time, so I just wanted to sort of have a little a roundup of what we've gone over here. In terms of sort of the optimizing project delivery is what we've wanted to speak about. The strategies, challenges, and future trends. I think what it seems we've all agreed on is some of the key points are communication is obviously number one. It's having the right, up and down the chain. Making sure everyone's aware of where we need to be. Transparency is a big part of that. I was going to say earlier, I think that sometimes ego can play a big part in a lack of transparency. And it's just everyone, because like you mentioned, Anthony, you don't want to sometimes mention that you've dropped the ball somewhere. So you try to do something to solve the problem that you've made. And then gets
Make it
worse.
worse.
And it's no one wants to be the one who's dropped the ball or anything else. But I suppose with any good team, if you can have that transparency and open communication, and not a blame culture, then it becomes easier for people to put their hand up when they've done something wrong. You mentioned Ayub about shortened cycles. So when there's major challenges, we spoke about sort of changes in scope creep or changes in whatever it needs to be. Having shortened cycles of when we're reviewing stuff, when we're reviewing milestones, can have a big impact in limiting the damage that those scope creeps or these changes can make. So I thought that was a really, really good point. Niels and actually all of you mentioned around, and we just literally said now, like AI as a tool, but there's plenty of tools, but not to use tools for tools' sake. Just because there's something out there, a new shiny thing, that's not just implemented because it's supposed to make our lives easier, because at times having lots of different tools around the business and people working in different ways is going to affect delivery goals. And then with AI, as we mentioned, that is a tool, but it's something that we can use to pick up the slack and use for efficiency. So writing our project reports or helping us flesh out some documents or doing some of these more simpler time-consuming, simpler tasks can then help us focus on that. Can using AI to deliver those parts can then help us focus maybe on the more human side, which is the transparency, the communication, and working with the team to motivate and find out where they are and see where the challenges are coming up, so we can manage them more effectively. So I think, I've stolen a lot of your ideas there, so thanks. But I think that's as a whole, that's what we've been. That's where what we've come to from this conversation.
Yeah, agreed.
Fantastic.
I think I have just one last topic in general, because we didn't mention. I think that everyone has the same. There is a big challenge, which is the shortage of expertise inside our team and the skills. That's I think that during the last years we all suffered from this, and we continue to suffer from it. That's, I think, one of the challenges that is still open. I don't think that AI would solve too much of this, of course. And it is there, and so how to get really expert resources quickly in the market to get hands-on and to deliver our project efficiently on time. That's a big issue.
Well, I wasn't going to mention it, but I know someone who could probably help with that.
Yeah.
No, but all jokes aside, that is, having the right people in place to actually deliver the work is critically important. You can have the right communication, the right tools, everything can align, but if you haven't got people who can actually do what you need, that is, and getting the right people at the right times, speed of turnaround, knowing what you need and be able to get the right people in the project efficiently and smoothly is a big issue, because we're seeing that it can take weeks, sometimes months, to get the team together. So having a partner like Coltech, who can form project teams efficiently, usually within 48 hours, is going to help anyone. So thanks for that. It took me onto a nice plug for the business. But all jokes aside, I really, really, really appreciate your time. I've learned a lot from this conversation, and thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for arranging.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Thank
Very
you, Patrick.
interesting.